What is midlife crisis? Midlife crisis is one thing in essence, is the person realizing the gap between the dreams they had about adulthood, about the independent life, about their life, the concept that they had generally, what is life all about, and what actually happened. You reach a point, everyone reaches a point where there's a clash. It's not quite it. Now, for most people, it takes, give or take, about 2 decades of operating their own operating system and realizing and admitting to themselves the limits, because they ventured into independence having big dreams, most of them. Right? And a big dream might be, for some, unfortunately, only to survive. And they find it difficult. And now what? Like, I don't understand. Something is not working in that system. So most people, they start what I call the switching game. They start switching variables. Switch the car, switch the job, switch the house, switch the wife, switch the spouse, the husband, switch. That process never works. Why? Because you're affecting the external. Now, we already said our life experience primarily happens inside, in that operating system, which we'll get back to. The purpose of this work is essentially to improve and open up your experience of life, right? The essence of your interest in this work is to have a bigger, better, more flowing, more expansive, more self-realized life experience, right? To do that, the way I work is go to the very, very, very basics of what we call the experience of life, right? So we'll start with me explaining how the process works and how we go to the basic and reassemble the experience of life. That process will change your perspective of your own experience, and therefore will enable you to restructure it in the way you want. So the essence of this process is give you a bigger level of freedom in constructing your own life experience. Right? All right. So to start, let's understand what are we dealing with. The basics starts with our senses. Our experience of life goes through our senses. Now, we have 5 senses. If you believe in the 6th sense, we have 6 senses, right? If you lay down our senses in terms of what they actually detect, because what is a sense? Is a sensor. So what do we detect? What we detect is a very narrow sliver in the waveband scale. You know, our hearing is 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Our sight is 400 to 700 nanometers. If we normalize it in meters or whatever measurement you want, you will find that in the waveband, there's 5 narrow cracks through which signal comes into our system, yet we have a very rich life experience. Now, how does that happen? Our senses bring in the data, the signal. But then there is an interpretation of the signal and a meaning assignment process. So I'm saying words now, which really are packets of sound that I exert through my mouth. They reach your eardrum. You get them into your system. You interpret what is this sound, and then you assign meaning. Right? Now, that happens billions of times a second across all our senses, and there is a system inside that pieces it together and creates our life experience. Right? Now, let's break it down for a second. The process of detection of the signal is our senses, but everything past that is a system. Think of it as a central operating system. Right? That central operating system has been programmed in some way. That central operating system was programmed through 2 main methods. One is explicit learning. So when we are babies, Our caretakers, usually our parents, tell us, this is green, this is a dog, this is a tree, this is mommy, this is daddy, etc., etc. So there's a very direct and explicit learning process. But a lot of the stuff, and actually the stuff that really defines how we show up and how we experience our life as adults, is learned in an implicit process. For example, what is success? Who am I? What is intimacy? What is love? What is friendship? Those are the terms that really define kind of the main colors of our life experience as adults. Those terms are learned through experience. Nobody actually tells you this is it and this is that. It's kind of out there. And you piece it together through your experience, through the role models that you are exposed to, through all kinds of things that happen, but they're not directly learned. Some of us get lucky, and our parents sit us down and tell us friendship is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Yet, so you still go out and you experience and you learn what works for you, what doesn't, etc., etc. Right? Unfortunately, nobody gets the perfect role model across all facets. Mm-hmm. So we all get some of the key concepts a little bit backwards or sideways, not deliberately, because our parents or our environment, because it's not only the parents, obviously it's our siblings and our friends and the parents' friends and the family friends and the society and the neighborhood and the country and the culture and the religion, they all have inputs and impacts. Not on all counts, we get it right. And some key counts, we get it in a way that poses down the road major limitations. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, that central operating system that I'm talking about is being programmed gradually. The core programming happens in early childhood. The key concept, green, red, dog, tree, etc., etc. Right? The more complex concepts gradually are built off of that. Some of them are built out of the gate, except that we're not aware. For instance, trust. Mm-hmm. For instance, safety. Right? Those are being built right out of the gate explicitly, but we're not aware that we're learning them. It's a continuous experience. Right? Mm-hmm. As we mature, we get into teenage, we are more aware, we absorb more. And by the time we're, give or take 18 for most people, which is the point where we leave our parents' home and cocoon, and we supposedly, for most of us, we venture into what we call independent life, mm-hmm. we get loaded with concepts. We get programmed. Right? As we venture into what we call independence, what actually happens is we continue learning, but now we need to start operating our own operating system on our own. Right?
Training wheels have to come off.
Exactly. So now we're starting to figure out, kids go to college or wherever they go, and they start expanding the realm that's in their responsibility. Therefore, they push the envelope of that operating system that they got. And gradually they start learning what are the limitations. Where does it not really working for them? Mm-hmm. That learning is a long period. And for the average person, they reach midlife crisis in their mid-40s, or let's say between mid-30s to mid-50s. What is midlife crisis? Midlife crisis is one thing in essence. The human life experience is really a process of self-discovery, but it really starts when you hit that point that you admit to yourself that the concepts that you thought, that you believed, that you were told, that you were programmed with, they're not working for you. They're not generating the happiness you were expected. You're not as excited about life as you thought you would be. All right? Okay. That switching game of the external variables never works because the impact on your operating system is limited. Going back to where we started, let's talk about the operating system. That operating system is the system that brings the whole experience together. Right? We get signals, we process them, we assign meaning. That meaning defines really our experience. Do we enjoy it? Do we hate it? Is it good for us? Is it bad for us? Am I in pain or am I feeling great? That operating system is called human consciousness. Right? Our consciousness is where our life experience really happens. So if we wish to affect change, and relatively quickly, we need to tweak that system. Now, that system is built out of those structures and belief system and mental structures that we accumulated through our experience. That's the programming, because what is programming? A simple example for programming: as a child, I stuck my hand into the electric socket, got zapped, went flying to the other side of the kitchen, said to myself, yeah, not gonna do that again. That's learning, right? Sometimes it's explicit, this is green, this is red, and sometimes it's through those experiences. That belief system that generated from sticking my finger into the socket kept me safe the rest of my life, right? But some belief systems, they're not actually keeping you safe. They're actually creating limits. For example, when we had your initial interview and you spoke about your past, right? And you mentioned you showed your life progress, especially childhood, and we'll get back to it in a minute. And later on, I asked you, what are the give me an overview of your life path. You mentioned two things that a red flag, that something is going on. What does it mean, a red flag? That there is a nugget there that is a piece of the software that's causing you limitation today. Right? You mentioned that up to the age of 6, your stepsister was living with you, and then she moved out. Right? On the other hand, when I asked you about the major events in your life, you didn't mention that. Now, the first 6 years of your life, you had a sibling that was in your life, dominant. Even 10 years old, 10 years of gap, it's a dominant child. It's a big variable in your experience. And all of a sudden, it disappeared. It's out of the picture. Right? You not mentioning it is how come? So this tells me there is something related to that is today a belief system that you're not aware of, that is creating limitations. Right? You mentioned later that your fiancé pushes you sometimes to look inside, to look where things coming from, right? My guess, it has to do with your relationship, a lot of it. Your relationship, she's your fiancé, has to have a component of intimacy. Intimacy requires trust, right? Now, your experience with women is, whether you're aware of it or not, that they can disappear. Sudden disappearance creates fear, hold on a second. So many of us, what we do in that kind of situation, we assign fear of disappearance, and therefore we keep ourselves guarded. We don't allow too much exposure inside to that person, because they can disappear and that can be painful. See?
Absolutely.
All right. So that's an example how this process how this work works. So for us, the first stage is understand how your system is wired. Now, to understand how it is wired, we need to understand the key events that shaped it and what were the implications, because each one of us, we can experience the same event, but the implication will be very different. We'll take it in very differently, and the impact on our consciousness will be different. So we need to understand the event, we need to understand the impact and how widespread, because this may be fear of connecting with a female person, with somebody that's close, because of fear of the looming potential disconnect, sudden disconnect, right? The suddenty of it creates a bigger fear. It's like you have no control. You're 6 years old, your sister disappeared all of a sudden. And we'll talk about it in a minute. What was the relationship between the two of you before that, if you recall? But that has an impact on your psyche, which unconsciously creates, okay, hold on, there's so much closeness I'm allowing to a female in my life.
Which probably then triggers that female leaving, because, the cycle continues.
Exactly.
Right.
That, by the way, is how karma perpetuates.
Okay.
Right? We get belief systems from our ancestors, from our grandparents, then our parents. There's a certain way of doing things in a family, certain things we don't talk about, for instance, certain emotions that are not exposed, right? And then we believe this is normal. So we show up like that, and that continues in the lineage.
I've heard tradition is just peer pressure from dead people.
Yep. Yeah. So the first layer of this process is a little bit of archaeology work, right? We're going to dig and try and understand what are the key events that shaped your psyche, your consciousness, and how widespread they are in your system today, right? And through that, we'll try and find what are the limitations, right? So one way is digging in and trying to understand where it's coming from. And the other way is to understand what are the challenges you're facing today and try and connect the dots, right? So that's layer one. Layer two, once we identify, think of it as those things that we identify as the bugs in the system. Those are the elements in your consciousness that create the pain or the friction or the lack of satisfaction from your life experience today. So the next stage will be healing those, right? To explain what healing is, we need to explain what trauma is, right? So what is trauma? Trauma is a painful event with a lasting impact. Another way to say it, an event in the past that has an effect on the present. Right? So it has a residue. It has, and how does that work? We create a belief system, as I mentioned. And through that belief system, we believe reality is this way or that way. We believe this is good or not good for us. We believe that this is possible or not possible. Right? So those belief systems will create limitations. For example, we might believe, because of some painful event in our past, that intimacy is dangerous. It can cause pain, so we shy away from it. We shy away from it. We can't create real loving relationship, deep, that stick. Then our relationships fall apart early. And we get frustrated. We don't have full satisfaction from our experience of life, right? So understanding the trauma, that's the first stage. Then healing it. Healing it is eliminating the effect. The memory will stay. It's not about forgetting. People that saying, one of the big falsehoods that's going around is time heals. Time doesn't heal. It just deepens the suppression and the limit that it imposes. So it's not about forgetting the trauma. It's about eliminating the impact on the present moment. You want a painful memory just to become a memory. So that's the healing part. And we'll go through that. And then there's the last part, which is you have certain belief system. For example, intimacy is dangerous. Eliminating the impact of the past is not only healing, it's also creating a new belief system. Because once we eliminate the impact, you need a new piece of software to replace it. You can't operate in the void. So what is it? Good, bad, not true. So you want to create a belief system that is conducive, that supports the life experience that you want. That's where free choice comes in. Right? I'm not going to tell you intimacy is good. You need to decide if, and you need to decide, and you have, that's where real free choice kicks in, because you get to design your adult consciousness. Right? So those are the three layers: digging, archaeology, healing, and rewiring. Right? Now, because the impact of the past cuts across different facets of life, different domains, what will happen is we're gradually going to get into a groove in which we're going to deal with different aspects in a different dimension. So we will be going between them based on the domain we're in. And the idea behind this process is really to teach you how to do it on your own. So we're not going to continue this till the end of days. At some point you learn how your system operates, and you can keep doing those processes on your own, at your time, and design the life that you want.